My father passed away and he left me some things behind, so I thought that I could share this with my husband, but guys, you will not believe the words he said to me. Let me share those words with you. Since we're married, this money that you just got from your father is not yours. It's mine. I'm 32, female. I started dating Benjamin in my third year of college. My first boyfriend, Charles, was pretty irresponsible, spending money on alcohol. Despite being a student, he still has an allowance from his parents. I dated him for 6 months before dumping him because it was frustrating talking to somebody who only seemed to want to have fun in his life. Later on, I met Benjamin, and I instantly liked him because he was calculating, smart. He's an accountant, so it's just natural. Back when Benjamin and I dated, right after college, because he didn't want any distractions in college, he did only the bare minimum when it came to taking me out and buying me gifts. Back then, I didn't mind, as long as was getting attention. Benjamin was pretty good looking and had a natural charisma to him, so I counted myself lucky. I'm a plain Jane, and I guess that speaks for itself. I could tell Benjamin really liked me as well. We talked a lot, and he came over to visit me, and as long as I did not ask for much, we did not have arguments. My marriage came soon after, when I was 26. I was working as a secretary in a small firm, and Benjamin and I were in a long-distance relationship. He had gone to stay with his family in Colorado for a while, and we spoke over the phone a few times. When Benjamin returned, he proposed to me, saying he did not see himself spending his life with any other woman. I was over the moon when I got engaged, and no one was able to kill my happiness, except for my mother. For some reason, my mom had never liked Benjamin. The first time he came over to my house for dinner, my dad took a liking to him because Benjamin was a highly logical person. My mom and my dad had disliked Charles and were so relieved when we were no longer dating. They had met him when they visited me in school, and you see, Benjamin was polite and treated my mom with so much respect. So I really did not understand what her problem was with him. 2 days after Benjamin visited, my mom told me not to get married to him. She told me that she had a bad feeling about my upcoming marriage with Benjamin and that I should not jump into something that I was not prepared for. I tried to calm her down by reminding her that I've dated my fiancé for years and knew him pretty well. My mom still insisted, but at the time, I could not have cared less what she thought was best for me. The beginning of my marriage was okay. I did not really depend on Benjamin because I had a job that paid fairly well. I ended up quitting because of an argument I had with somebody at work. Benjamin told me to stop working there, and I was grateful because my workplace had become a nightmare. I happily quit my job and focused on being a stay-at-home wife. Benjamin had always provided money for the essentials, so working did not really matter so much since there was a reliable and good source of income flowing in. Then it became unbearable. It started with me asking Benjamin for some money to get myself a nice dress I saw on display when going to the store. He told me I had tons of clothes and needed nothing new. Well, he was right, and I let it go. But after asking for money for a few things several times, I started to get frustrated, and I went to my parents and complained. My dad told me that I should try to understand, but my mom was quite upset. She went ahead to call Benjamin, and that caused the very first serious argument I had in my home. Benjamin told me that I was selfish and thought only about money, and I asked what was wrong with wanting a few things for myself. After a lot of shouting, we both ended up sleeping in separate rooms. I had made up my mind to start working again and began to search for job listings the very next day. Unfortunately for me, I wasn't able to get anything decent. The only job that seemed worthwhile was not close by, and I did not get calls after the, few interviews I went for. I decided then to accept my fate for what it was. My parents began to send me money at some point, and I felt like a student again, but for a while I was content and tried to push away the pain that came with knowing my husband would not provide for me. Well, I took care of the bills whenever I could so that I would at least help out in the household. But my dad got sick, and I felt guilty taking any money from my parents, so my allowance was halted for a bit, and this was just about 8 months ago. I did not bother asking Benjamin for money and would visit my parents whenever I could. My dad is not getting better. I'm scared. Mom kept saying that it's becoming harder for her to take care of my dad and manage the bills too, and I suggested staying over since I was literally unemployed, but Benjamin would not have it. Dad told me he didn't want to cause any problems in my marriage, while Mom ranted and raved. I had to look for a solution, right? Luckily, one came to me 4 months ago in the form of a friend, Julie. I lent Julie some money, which I got from my father, and she started up a mini multi-purpose complex as a business. She had gotten a loan and needed some more money, promising it was going to be profitable in the long run. She had even told people about her project before she started it, and we bought a former boutique and did a few renovations. At first, I regretted it, but now I'm glad that I helped her out because I'm currently benefiting from it. I handle the finances because I'm good with money and also get a small but reasonable portion of the month's earnings, which I use to contribute to my dad's treatment. Does my husband know about this? I'm not sure, but I did not inform him about it. I don't know, maybe he's a bit suspicious, but I don't really care. All I want now is for my dad to get better. Update number 1. I'm finding it really hard to get over my dad's death. He passed away a little over 3 weeks ago, and I was absolutely broken. Mom came over to stay with me, and even Benjamin, who I thought had become a robot, showed tons of sympathy and care. He made sure to comfort my mom whenever she was sad, even when she did not want him to, multiple times. He even went as far as getting whatever it was either of us wanted, and I began to have faith in my marriage again. Perhaps Benjamin had his reasons for being a miser. I never did ask about his work because he wasn't the sharing type, so maybe circumstances made him that way and things were better now. As unbelievable as that sounds, Mom moved out a week ago. I went with her. Later on, my dad's lawyer came around, and that's how I got my hands on a few thousands of dollars. Dad had apparently kept the money for me after hearing me complain about my husband the first time and wanted me to have a comfortable life. No matter what. Mom got a substantial share as well, and before I left for my house, my mom told me to keep it from Benjamin. I didn't know why she told me that because I thought she was starting to like my husband. But I guess I will never know. I thought of expanding my business with Julie and talked to her about it when I got home. She was all for the idea, but we've agreed to wait a little while before going on with the plan. The complex was relatively new after all, so there's no rush. Another eventful thing that occurred was my husband asking me out on a date after returning to the home. At first, I thought he was joking about it, but Benjamin hardly ever joked, especially ever since we've been married. It was a nice change, and we both enjoyed ourselves during the dinner. Post-dinner talk was mainly about how my mom and I were coping. He also asked how my mom would fare, and I told him that my dad had ensured my mother would be comfortable before he died, and that was also when Benjamin found out that my dad had left me money in his will. I did not tell him how much it was, but I did not see the need to hide that I've been left money by my father. People have assets to their children after their deaths all the time. I'm sure he was already wondering, but was probably waiting for me to talk about it. Well, my mom called yesterday. I told her all about my date with my husband, and she was shocked. Which was not so surprising. I reasoned that he was being extra caring because of my dad's passing. She agreed. Not until I mentioned telling her that Benjamin was aware of the money left for me, and she made a ha sound, and told me that Benjamin was after the money that my dad left, and I told her to stop being ridiculous, and we got into a pretty big fight. My mom told me that I was naive because Benjamin loved his money more than he would ever love me, and I told her that her immense dislike for my husband was causing her to hallucinate and conjure up rubbish. The phone call ended badly, and my mood was so bad that even Benjamin noticed. When I told him all about it, he laughed and told me that I would never take the money given to me. Before I could breathe out a sigh of relief and make a note to tell my mom that I was right, Benjamin told me that everything I had was his, since we were married, and he gave me a slight kiss on the cheek and fell asleep soon after. It wasn't like I had anything to say to him after that statement anyways. What did he mean by, well, what he told me? I was so restless that I could not even sleep last night. Now, Benjamin told me he wanted to have a discussion about the money so that I would not spend it all. He jokingly told me that he would give me the best advice for free since he was my husband, and he left the house, saying that he would see me this evening. The dread I felt, guys, last night doubled, and I realized my mom might have been onto something. I should have listened to her and just kept my mouth shut. All I have is his because we're married? Was all he had mine? What bullcrap? I accept that I messed up by telling Benjamin everything, but that's the last mistake I will ever be making. Update number 2. My dad left money behind, and Benjamin was really after it. How did everyone else see this but me? I mean, come on. Even Julie figured it out when I told her 2 weeks ago. I could not talk to my mom about it because we weren't on really good terms, and I did not want to go up to her and tell her that she was, well, right about Benjamin. And it's not because of the ego thing. She would tell me to get a divorce again. She had done that at some point, and during the time when my parents would send me money to take care of myself. I told her that things were fine in my marriage, but she would argue and just told me to open up my eyes, saying that husbands should spoil their wives, and I told her I was well fed and taken care of, and just ignored her words. Julie sympathized with me when I told her, and she was a single mother and did not really know what advice to give me. In the end, I decided to talk to Benjamin about my fears. I hoped he would listen, but that only led to an argument that night. I told him that the money left to me by my father was one I could use anytime and anyhow I wanted. Benjamin agreed, and when I thought he started to understand what I was telling him, he said he could use it however he wanted to as well. I told him that wasn't the case and asked him to explain the statements he made the other night. Benjamin told me that he believed that married couples shared everything, and when I asked what he had shared between the two of us, he told me he paid for everything around the house without even asking me for a dime, even when I was working. I told him it's his responsibility to do so, and that he could have talked to me if he needed money for anything. I was apparently the bad guy in our argument because Benjamin told me that I was going to regret my words. The first thing I noticed was that Benjamin stopped eating in the house. He would leave before I made any breakfast, and when he returned, he would tell me he had gotten some food and was not interested in whatever I cooked. I stopped cooking for him altogether. Then he slapped the bills in my face last weekend when I was eating at the dinner table. He told me that he had done all the calculations and gave me an amount of money to pay. I told him that he was being absurd and should stop with whatever he was doing. Benjamin told me that if I did not bring any money to pay the bills, he would not be responsible for whatever happened. Well, I didn't sleep with my husband that night and subsequent nights after. 3 days ago, our power was cut off. Benjamin was nowhere to be seen, and I honestly did not know how to handle it. So I called him and told him I was ready to bring some money to pay my share of the bills, and he returned the next morning. I'd gone to stay with my mom and gave him the money as soon as I saw him at the house. I went out to speak to Julie again, telling her everything that's happened in my home. I could not believe Benjamin would be so petty. Julie told me to give Benjamin whatever he wanted so that peace would return to my house if I was willing to stay in the marriage. There was that clause that she put, and I was wondering if she really meant for me to file a divorce as well. Yesterday, I asked Benjamin for money for groceries. He at least used up basic groceries, so he had to contribute. To my shock, he told me he wasn't going to do anything of the sort, since I had the money to go to the supermarket and get what I wanted, and yes, we had another fight on the spot. I told Benjamin that he was just being unreasonable and petty. He told me that I was still selfish and could not see what he had been doing for me all these times. After staying quiet for a bit, I finally came up with a plan. I told Benjamin that I would be unresponsible and selfish like he claimed I was until he cut his crap out. Benjamin asked me first thing this morning why I had not ironed his work shirts. I told him that they did not belong to me and that he had the hands to do so also. My husband laughed, called me wicked, and told me he would easily go to the laundromat since I decided to act like an immature teenager. He left the house immediately and my heart felt broke. I finally went to my mother later on and told her everything, and my guess was right. She told me that my marriage was not working out anymore and I should file for a divorce. I stayed with her and just cried my eyes out. So, I got off the phone with Benjamin about 2 hours ago. I told him I wasn't feeling well and that I needed to stay with my mother for a bit. And he threatened to divorce because he has no use for a selfish wife. He told me to come home ASAP as soon as I could before hanging up the phone. Not bothering about the white lie, I told him. What was becoming of my husband? Was I in the wrong for what I've done? And now that Benjamin and my mom have seen eye to eye for once, is this really the end of my marriage? I don't know what to do anymore. Update number 3. Hey guys, I filed for divorce before heading back home. And when I showed Benjamin the divorce papers, his eyes went wide with shock. Benjamin told me that he had only used that as a threat and that he really did not want a divorce. Well, I wasn't convinced, but after he started to beg me, more than that day, I decided to give our marriage another shot. After all, I was not keen on divorce either. But at the same time, I was not going to keep quiet and act like things were just fine. I told Benjamin that we had to talk if he really wanted us to remain married, and after a few days, he finally told me he was ready to have a discussion with me. I told him to resume paying the bills and eating at home, and I told him that I would support him in any way he needed me to support him, as long as it was reasonable since he was the one who told me not to work anymore. I also told him that I would resume taking care of the house, as that was my own responsibility. Finally, I said that I would not be asking him for money unless it was for groceries or things that would benefit us both. I told him that I would take care of my own wants, as long as he did his part. Everything should go back to how it was. I was more than okay with it. Not happy, but okay. Benjamin said he was fine with it, and I was happy that he was. I moved back into our bedroom, and while things were awkward at first, they eventually became normal. But Benjamin suddenly switched up on me 2 weeks ago. I woke up and found him staring at me. When I asked him what the heck the problem was, he told me that the agreement that we had earlier was not a reasonable one. I let him speak because I wanted to hear what he wanted to say, and Benjamin told me that he understood where I was coming from, but that things were not like they were before. Well, I asked if he was talking about work, and he said that he was talking about the money I now had. Benjamin told me that he knew about my business but had not said anything because I did not bother him with trivial requests anymore. He also said that he could not be the only one paying bills now, that I not only had a source of income but probably had more money than he did. I thought about it and it made sense to me. I was pretty surprised at myself. Here I was, hating my husband's habits of keeping all his money to himself, and I'd become just like him without even knowing it. I agreed. We split the bills 50-50. I did not mind it, and things were back to normal in my home. So, Julie called me 3 days ago and told me that there had been a workplace accident. A fire broke out in the eastern that we ran, and after some calculations of the eatery, I knew that I was going to take out a huge sum of money to cover up the damages and the injured employees' hospital bills. Julie was upset with everything, but she had too close to nothing to offer. She was taking care of her son and her parents as well, and I told her not to worry about it and decided to shoulder that responsibility alone. But Benjamin sat me down after dinner that night and told me he needed, some money to pay off a loan that he applied for some years back. I didn't hear the details of what he said because he was talking about more money, and I was still recovering from calculating the damages that I had to pay for. I told Benjamin that now was seriously not a good time. Not at all. And then I went ahead and excused myself, wanting to lie down and think things through logically. My husband had followed me into the bedroom and asked what was wrong, and when I told him, he told me to forget about the complex, give him the money because he needed it urgently. His decision was ridiculous, but I told him that I still needed time to think about it. I'm sure I upset him, but I really needed some time to myself. The next morning, Benjamin woke me up and told me not to start being selfish again. I pleaded with Benjamin to give me time, but he told me that he had given me a solution I refused to take. Did he really expect me to abandon Julie that way? I thought of paying off his loan and paying for the damages, but that was going to cost me quite a few $1,000s, and I'd planned to use the money to start something new, but that would be impossible if I did all that. I'd have to apply for a loan, and that wasn't something I was interested in doing at all. I talked to Julie, and she said that she would pay me back little by little if I was okay with it. She was still trying to pay off the loan that she had gotten when started up the complex and was responsible for teenagers and 2 elderly adults. I told her not to bother with it, and that I would talk to Benjamin and ask him to be patient. That proved pointless as well, and I got threatened with a divorce again. What kind of husband did this, throwing divorce in my face like it was nothing? Would he tell me it was a joke again? Benjamin had then told me that he had taken out a loan to help his younger brother, who was now in more debt after mismanaging the money given to him. He also told me he was in debt himself because he had asked a friend for his funds to get us the house that we currently live in. This was news to me. And when I asked him why he did not tell me, he told me that he planned to ask my father for some money before he passed away, and after doing a lot of thinking, I told myself that I would help Benjamin out. The business could wait, and it wasn't doing well, and I was losing because of that. But I was sure things would get better at some point. Besides, Benjamin was my husband, and I ought to put him first, right? Update number 4. I'm divorced now. It took a while, but I found out that Benjamin was lying about the debt his brother was in. I'd called John, Benjamin's brother, on a whim and told him that I was going to help out. He was confused at first and did not even know who was calling. I didn't really speak to my extended family so much because, it did not seem like Benjamin did, and I found out that he lied to me. When I asked what was really going on to pay for, Benjamin told me that he lost his job early in the year and was living off a loan that he applied for. The money was almost exhausted and he had almost no source of income, and he needed to pay it back in a few months. It was quite sad to hear him talk, and for the first time I saw a defeated look on Benjamin's face. So, I asked why he did not trust me enough to tell me the truth, and he told me he did not find it necessary for me to know the details. I asked about the house, and he told me that what part was true. When I suggested leaving the house and going somewhere smaller, Benjamin got livid. He asked me why I found it hard to give him money to cover his debt when he had taken care of me for so many years. I found his statement to be kind of funny. I'd taken care of myself even when the romance was still alive in my marriage. I dressed and bought the little things I needed as a woman, and he did not care where the money came from. I even paid bills after my parents started sending me money monthly, and now that I have a decent chunk of money to my name, I was still paying bills and taking care of myself. I told him everything that happened with me and my family, excluding the business back then. Now, he knew every financial move that I've made, and he's still opening his mouth to tell me that he's taking care of me for years? Even the house we lived in wasn't totally ours anymore. What exactly had he done for me that I had not reciprocated in my own way as a wife? When Benjamin threatened me with divorce, like I knew he would, I told him I was ready for it. It was probably a joke again, but I could not care less. I went into the bedroom and packed a few things before storming out of the house. I was sick of all the secrets, the lies, and the pain of being married without feeling loved. My mom provided me with a shelter for a while, and I told Julie that I was going to be missing in action for some time. She told me she understood, and Benjamin had not apologized for anything this time, and it made my decision oh so easy. My divorce was finalized 3 weeks ago. Now I'm pouring all my efforts into taking care of myself and making sure the business flourishes. I'm not sure how Benjamin's faring, but I do know that he no longer lives in our former home. I also have not seen or heard from him in a while, so I guess that's the end of my relationship with my husband. It'll take some time, but I'm putting an effort to put all that into the past. We just found out towards the end of the story that OP has had it up to here with old Benjamin. She doesn't want to deal with his nonsense anymore. She wants the toxicity completely out of her life, so she cuts him off, divorces him, and goes ahead with her career. Well, guys, I do want to know your thoughts about this story. Some of the comments were actually on Benjamin's side, believe it or not. Most of the comments, though, were in support of OP. However, some of them did have some criticism. One of the main criticisms I was seeing is OP waited far too long before she finally said, "You know what, Benjamin? Get out of my life." If anybody out there has been through a similar experience that you want to share, go ahead. Drop it downstairs in our comment section. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories like this every single day. The best way to support the channel and see daily videos is really simple. Here's the top 3 ways. Number 1, and the best one, subscribe to the channel. Number 2, drop a comment down below. And number 3, smash that like button. Guys, I will see you tomorrow, but just remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.